With today's illegal, unconstitutional, and partisan impeachment, the do-nothing Democrats, and they are do-nothing, all they want to do is focus on this, what they could be doing, are declaring their deep hatred and disdain for the American voter. This lawless partisan impeachment is a political suicide march for the Democrat Party. Have you seen my polls in the last 4 weeks?
Well, President Trump was impeached last night in the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives, and I'm sure that this has completely ruined his chances for getting reelected next year. Oh, wait, what's this? New poll shows Donald Trump beating all Democratic presidential frontrunners in Iowa.
It's bizarre to think that he's getting cheers on Battle Creek, Michigan on the same night he is literally getting impeached on the floor of the House. It is bizarre, but historians will make more sense of it than we can right now.
All right, Andrew Mitchell, Chuck mentioning that the polling continuing to show nothing has really fundamentally changed. So will actual impeachment change anything?
We don't know, because to be totally honest, one would have thought that over all of these weeks and the testimony and the arguments on the other side, that something would have shifted, but the poll numbers that we have tonight that came out just this evening are exactly identical to the same polling we had in October within the margin of error.
The polls do not look good for the Democrats.
President Trump is winning the messaging war about impeachment. Democrats are losing.
This is absolute partisanship right down the line here. And it may go down in history as an example of how not to do impeachment.
And he will run for re-election, you betcha, as he hadn't had a thing to do with it.
For such a historic day, yesterday felt like an ordinary Wednesday, and impeachment day was a dud. Not a single Republican voted for it, and Tulsi Gabbard didn't vote for it or against it. She just voted that she was present. Democrats are so in shock that President Trump has come out of this completely unscathed that CNN's Jeffrey Toobin doesn't believe his network's own polls.
That poll is wrong. It's just I don't believe it. Well, like, it makes no sense.
NBC's Chuck Todd is especially disappointed that we don't care that President Trump was impeached and that yesterday felt like an ordinary day with Democrats just airing their grievances.
Chuck, we knew this was going to happen, but to hear the words the president has been impeached, does the world suddenly we wake up to a different world tomorrow? Or is it going to look awfully familiar?
It feels like we're unfortunately looking awfully familiar. As we began this day, it is bizarre to me that this heavy, momentous thing is happening in our country, a part of the Constitution that's rarely used. It's being used, and there is this sort of, well, it's just another day, or it's just another battle in the political war, and I mean, the president's holding a rally right now.
Thanks for the reminder, Cuck Todd. Let's check in with President Trump at that rally right now. I'm sure he's completely devastated.
I don't know about you, but I'm having a good time. It's crazy. So I'm not worried because it's always good. When you don't do anything wrong, you get impeached. That may be a record that will last forever. But you know what they have done? They've cheapened the impeachment process.
Yes, they certainly have. And let's not forget what Jerry Nadler had to say about impeachment back in the 1990s when it was happening to Bill Clinton.
The effect of impeachment is to overturn the popular will of the voters as expressed in a national election. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment substantially supported by one of our major political parties and largely opposed by the other. Such an impeachment would lack legitimacy, would produce divisiveness and bitterness in our politics for years to come, and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions.
Of course, Hillary Clinton had a perfectly reasonable explanation for what was happening to her husband, and it had nothing to do with Monica Lewinsky at all.
The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
And speaking of conspiracies, George W. Bush led us into the Iraq War based off of a conspiracy theory that, of course, later turned out not to be true. But Nancy Pelosi said that she knew before all of us that there were no weapons of mass destruction, but she still didn't want to impeach him.
Speaker Pelosi, you resisted calls for the impeachment of President Bush in 2006 and President Trump following the Mueller report earlier this year. This time is different. Why did you oppose impeachment in the past? And what is your obligation to protect our democracy from the actions of our president now?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up the question about, because when I became Speaker the first time, there was overwhelming call for me to impeach President Bush on the strength of the war in Iraq, which I vehemently opposed. And again, I said at other places, that was my wheelhouse. I was intelligence. I was the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, even before I became part of the leadership of Gang of Four. So I knew there were no nuclear weapons in Iraq. It just wasn't there. They had to show us, they had to show the Gang of Four all the intelligence they had. The intelligence did not show that that was the case. So I knew it was a misrepresentation to the public. But having said that, it was in my view, not a ground for impeachment.
What better example is there of the establishment protecting itself than Nancy Pelosi openly admitting that she knew the stories of WMDs in Iraq were a fabrication to get us there, but wouldn't impeach George Skull and Bones Bush for that, but decided to impeach President Trump for engaging in diplomacy on the phone with the president of a foreign country. It's important to remember that the Democrats vowed to impeach President Trump literally just minutes after he was inaugurated as president on January 20th, 2017. As the Washington Post admits, the campaign to impeach President Trump has begun. Democrats are getting so desperate after the impeachment day dud that some are resorting to the old Trump rallies are empty line and posting images of the exits where the fire marshals require that there be plenty of open space. But this is what it actually looked like inside the rally, as usual, completely packed to the rafters with thousands and thousands of people waiting outside for hours in sub-zero temperatures to be there. And if you haven't listened to the Democrats complain enough this week, there's another debate tonight, which will probably be the lowest rated in history, because I'm pretty sure the entire country has heard enough of them for this year.
The president convicted on both articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, the same night he held one of the most lengthy rallies I have seen in Battle Creek, Michigan.